Hey guys, I'm the Opinionated Reefer and welcome to part 2 of the SPS Dominated Nano Tank. It's been about a month since the last video, and as you can see there's been quite a few changes, so we'll just get into it right now. The first thing you probably notice is I've added some fish. So yeah, I picked up a pair of clowns, and that third fish is what you call a black bar chromis. There's also a fair few frags in there as well. That basically is because I had no other choice. The main tank was suffering some catastrophic losses and I had to chop up some colonies, fairly big SPS colonies actually, and I've put them in here just in the hopes that they can survive. Although since this video was actually taken, I've kind of solved the problem that was causing the STN in the main tank, but we'll get into that in another video. So I believe the last thing we've seen was that the tank was having a major bacteria bloom or algae bloom. So what basically happened was I switched the lights off for a week over the tank and the algae bloom just kind of faded away on its own. What we're seeing here is the day after the algae bloom disappeared. As you can see, the live rock's looking pretty good, got some coralline algae growing on it, and there's that digi that survived a week's blackout and an algae bloom. The rockwork looks pretty clear, all clean-up crew survived, just a few little bits of cyano or algae just left there, so things were looking up at this point. So what I did was I waited another few days and then I went and picked up a pair of common clownfish. It was round about this time that I also chopped up the larger SPS colonies from the main display tank and transferred them over to the nano. I actually mounted some of the frags on the rockwork on some small coral discs that could be easily removed. I still intend to actually remove these frags and dip them periodically to make sure that no Acropora eating flatworms have actually made it into this system. You can also see that there's a fair bit of sort of green algae or green cyano starting to appear on the rockwork there. The tank is still very much maturing at this point and is still maturing right now, so I'm sure it will get worse before it gets better. It's just a quick look at some of the frags there. Some of these have actually declined further since this video was taken. What the actual problem is that some types of SPS, especially Acropora, can be really sensitive to big changes in phosphate levels. So the phosphate levels in my main display were pretty high and the phosphate levels in this tank are pretty low, so when I moved the frags over, some of them started to maybe STN a bit from the base, which is a classic sign of phosphate related stress. So in order to combat that, I started dosing a little bit of ATI nutrition phosphate, and I actually had to further frag some of those frags, clip off the sort of STN at the base, but I kind of overshot the phosphate dose, and as you will see, it's caused a bit of an algae bloom in the tank now. Another potential issue with the SPS, especially the Acropora, is that just general tank maturity. It's maybe not quite mature enough to keep Acropora alive. I mean, I'm not a big subscriber to that theory, but you do hear it quite often said that Acropora really struggle in new tanks or just outright die, or even that you shouldn't even attempt to keep Acropora until your tank's at least 1 year old. Now, I don't subscribe to that theory. As soon as you start to see coralline algae growing on your rockwork or your glass, you should be good to go. But then again, the only reason that these frags are actually in this tank at this stage is because I felt at the time I had no other choice. It was either leave them in the main and let them die, or move them in here and see if it would help. What actually happened in the main tank is my phosphate levels had creeped up super high. I wasn't reading the phosphate test kit correctly, so my phosphates reached something above 0.6, which is maybe 10 times higher than it should be. That combined with the acropore eating flatworms was the cause of major issues. The phosphate levels just sort of creeped up over the last 6 months, and I was sort of oblivious to it. How I actually discovered this was I sent my water away for an ICP test in desperation, and it came back with extremely high phosphate levels. So I guess that test kit is going in the bin, and I have ordered a HANA ultra low range phosphate checker. About a week after I added the 2 clownfish, I then made a little trip to Ness's Lair, my local LFS, and picked up the black bar chromis and this piece of live rock. I was speaking to the owner about the current lack of good quality live rock, and he actually suggested that I take a piece of live rock from his frag tank. It was actually a zoa rock that had no zoas on it, so he gave me this free of charge, which was very kind of him. These zoa rocks are actually collected from the wild and are probably the closest thing to old school live rock we can actually get these days. Now, as you can see, that is absolutely covered in coralline algae, and there's even a little sponge there on the bottom and a lot of other sort of biomatter there. Now that is what proper old school live rock used to look like, so I'm hoping this will really help with the tank maturity and the water quality. So here's a quick look at what it actually looks like in the tank. I mean, just look at that. That's what you call coralline algae. Really thick, mature coralline. I don't think you can ask for better than that as far as live rock goes, so hopefully it'll just seed the tank. So this is where we're at right now. As you can see, I've moved over a little frog spawn there, and you can see there's a bit of an algae bloom actually kicking off in some of the rock work. Again, this is because I actually dosed phosphates, ended up dosing too much phosphates and caused this. I'm really chuffed with the little black bar chromis. What a lovely little fish. Only cost £8, and it seems ideal for a nano tank. I mean, it's completely non-aggressive and it just sort of darts in and out of its own little cave there. I mean, some of the frags there look like they're pretty healthy actually, so that's doing no too bad actually. Even the cleanup crew there, the snails are completely covered in hair algae, so yep. What I've actually done is completely stopped dosing the phosphate. I'm just going to leave it be. Lesson learned. So the phosphate's actually dropped significantly again, which I'm hoping isn't going to cause more issues with the frags. We'll just have to wait and see. So the plan going forward for this tank is probably to add some more cleanup crew. I'm maybe going to pick up a little possum wrasse and maybe some other type of sort of nano fish, maybe a little coral goby or something along those kind of lines, a little blenny. We'll see. Once I see some of these frags actually start to base out and get some growth, then I know I'm home free and I can really start adding the corals to this tank. I should probably also mention at this point that I've actually started dosing some alpha reef because I've got all them SPS frags in the tank. The alkalinity levels started to drop pretty sharpish, so I'm currently dosing 3 mil per day of alpha reef, and that is it. That seems to be keeping everything steady for the moment. So that sort of covers everything this month in the SPS Dominated Nano Tank, so I guess I'll catch you later. Adios guys.